Hello and welcome to the Battle Line Podcast, where we have conversations on that collision of space between community, faith, and culture. I'm one of your hosts, Matt Satterley, and here with me is my host, co-host in life, beautiful wife, editor of Peer Magazine, Jamie Satterley. Jamie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
You always have a little bit of like, why are you calling me all these things?
Oh, it's fine. It's just sweet and sappy.
When your wife says it's fine, it's not fine, guys. All right. We also have with us here our co-host, producer, the one who makes this entire thing work, Elizabeth. How are you doing today, Elizabeth?
I'm super swell. How are you?
I heard them making fun of you on the Fight for Good podcast the other day about saying like super, when you say super fantabulous, super swell day, and they're just like.
So rude.
They're so grumpy. Don't stop being grumpy. All right. So today's episode, we're super excited. We have with us Jim Sparks.
You said super excited. Right after this.
I am super excited. You quiet down over there. Yes. So we have Jim Sparks, the Territorial Youth Director from the Western Territory. We're excited to have you with us. Super excited, Jim.
Super Friday, guys.
So, we were just talking with Jim right before we started recording about fighting the man. So I love that. Yeah. So, Jim, as we always ask this the first question for people. Tell us a little bit about yourself, the Western Territory, your responsibilities in the Western Territory. What do you cover? And we have a lot of listeners who don't quite maybe know what the Western Territory covers geographically. So tell us a little bit about how far. I've heard it said the sun doesn't set on the Western Territory. So if you can explain that to us too, please.
Yeah, that was a unique thing that showed up just a couple years ago. I didn't know that either. So, so the Western Territory goes from Colorado all the way to the Pacific Ocean, all those states, and then you have Alaska, Hawaii, and the Pacific and Marshall Islands. And there's a lot of those islands out there. So Chuuk, Pohnpei, Saipan, a bunch of little islands that are out there. And because of those islands, that's why we run into the sun doesn't ever set.
Have you been out there? Have you been to those islands?
I unfortunately have not. I was scheduled to go. It's a guaranteed kind of 2-week trip because you have to fly to Hawaii and then you have to fly out to the islands. And there's flights that only happen generally once a day on those islands. So it is a 2-week trip. And so I was finally scheduled to go. I was super excited. And then unfortunately my son was born. So I ran into a scheduling snafu there, and I knew once I had kids, then it was going to be difficult to go. But I hope to go someday soon. It is really amazing what happens out there, and actually, our media team just did a really neat piece on walkie-talkie ministry that's happening on one of the islands where they bought walkie-talkies for the whole village, and they've been doing Bible studies over walkie-talkies. And I think
that's very cool.
Totally rad. But yeah, so that's our territory. And then I'm part of the leadership team in the youth department in the Western Territory. There's 7 of us, and we are unique in that we have been together a really long time. Generally, youth department staff come and go quickly, and our least seniority, I don't know, is that the right way of saying it? Person who's been
Works
there
for
the
least senior.
She's in her 6th year, and there's a couple of us that are over 10 years been together, and so we are a family and we get along really well. We eat lunch pre-COVID together. We go on walks together. We are family. It's a weird group. And the best part is we don't agree on a lot of things. And, but we still have found a way to really work really well together. It's really fun. And it's been a privilege. I've been there for a long time. I don't know. I think I just passed 20 years with the Army full time. So that would probably put me at 16 or 17 years in the youth department.
Yeah, legally an adult in youth ministry.
I know. And I still get I feel like it's passing now. I think people have given up, but I went for years. They're like, okay, what are you going to do when you grow up? You know,
when you go into the audit department, Jim.
I know. I just feel like people have kind of given up, I think, at this point, because they don't bring that up anymore. They're like, oh, well.
No, I say, have you been to those other departments? Why would I ever want to go?
I know.
No offense, other departments.
Well, working in the youth department is tricky because there's this people have this weird stereotype of youth department employees of like you're wacky and just, fun and games and all that stuff. And so in our old office, we moved a couple of years ago, we redesigned it, and it was very much an open office where people could walk through and talk with us and stuff like that. And the amount of disappointment that people had coming through our department, they're like, oh, it's so quiet in here. I was like, yeah, it's weird when people work. Like, what happens?
They're like expecting confetti cannons going off as you walk.
And so a part of me really can't stand, I just can't stand that. But then it gets you out of things too. So it's this weird relationship I have with things, because they're like, don't invite the clown show. And so you don't we don't have to take it serious. Yeah. They don't have to go to some things, but at the same time, it's like every time we're walking to lunch, someone's like, oh, I just feel so much younger walking with this group. And I was like, we all have kids. Like, we're not young anymore. Like, so it's a weird relationship, but it's a fun
youth department. They always bring life, don't they? They always bring life to the events.
Well, they used to have me do a lot of welcomes, again, because of the youth department, and they're just fun crowd. Welcome of officers, welcome to the TCs, welcome chapels and stuff like that. And I think I had 2 or 3 in a row that were just a little much for them. And so I haven't been asked for several years. And so that's been one way of going about it.
Well, that is when the audit department's doing welcomes now, Jim. That's a good job.
I know. It's always like people hate stereotypes, but we live in stereotypes, because God help us if at commissioning the BA doesn't do the offering. Like if personnel does offering at commissioning, those officers are not. They have asterisks. Those new lieutenants have asterisks on it because it wasn't undone properly.
Some people just want to watch the world burn, Jim.
I've asked several times if we could do that, and the uncomfortableness of just asking that is like, oh, duh. But again, I'm the guy that, like, if you're sitting in a chair at camp and everyone gets up to go to eat, I'm not going to sit in that same chair again. I'm going to go sit in some other chair and then watch everyone just squirm and be like, you're sitting in my chair. I was at a Corps doing a visit, and the Corps had maybe 20 people in it. Big chapel, and I sat down, and this old guy came, tapped me on the shoulder, and goes, "You're sitting on the seat." I go, "Oh, I'm sorry," and I'm looking around, and there's no one within 3 pews of me. And he goes, "Can you move over, please?" And I was like, "Yes, I can move over." And so I moved over, and I sat next to him,
uncomfortably close. Yeah, I would hope.
So I don't know, we're weird creatures, but it keeps us normal, I guess, and weird.
Well, I'm afraid for my wife to ask this next question with all that you've already fired off. So,
no, I am very much looking forward. This has been my favorite question of this series so far. We always get great answers. So we know, Jim, we've heard that you've been in youth ministry for a while. So tell us, like, what's the funniest story, or just one of your favorite stories of your time working in youth ministry, or especially at camp? We always get good camp stories.
Oh, camp. So I worked 9 summers at camp. Here's the Army makes really good decisions and some really dumb ones. And one of them is I was 19 years old, and they hired me to be the program director for a camp. And at this particular camp, there's 2 camps on the property. So the DYS has to split time. So it's not like the DYS was around my shoulder the whole time, and the camp director. Like, they literally let me free with 55 staff members and 200 kids as a 19-year-old. Like, I can't believe it. But working in camp, I'm an observer. I like to observe things. I like to deconstruct things. It's a favorite thing of mine. And so, which unfortunately it does ruin some things. I could share a story about that. But as a 19-year-old running camp, some weird things happen, and like all of a sudden you're responsible for things. It was weird. But one time I was, I hid my age too, by the way, the whole summer. I hid my wallet, I hid everything, and there was 5 people on staff that knew my age, and I was like, "You cannot tell anybody. Period. Do not."
What about hiring paperwork? Did you I'm asking you if you lied on like official documents.
Nope. Nope. But here's what benefited me. I have a wrinkly old face, and so they really didn't understand how old I was. And I'm kind of as much fun as I like to have. I take camp seriously. Like we have to do it right. And so, but there was a moment. There was a couple moments that I failed greatly, and I pulled a lot of pranks when I was younger, working at camp. And I'm the kind of person that pulls pranks that I don't need to see the reaction. The action of doing a prank for me was exciting, but I don't need to see the reaction. I don't care. And if people don't laugh, I don't care either, because I think it's funny. I don't need laughter to fill me up. And so I was staying away from pranks. And I was telling everyone, don't do pranks. And they're like, well, I heard that you did a few. I go, well, I never got caught. And so, but what I would do is I would find out that they're doing pranks, and I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I would clean up their prank. And so then I would sit at the flagpole and I would wait for them to come down, and I would know exactly who did it, because they would start looking at each other, and I just write their names down as I'm watching them look at each other, going, all right, I know who to do. I know who to talk to. And they were so disappointed that they couldn't see their prank. But
the prank eraser.
Yeah, the one that I got away with in front of everybody when I was younger, we had a lifeguard who wasn't sharp, and
just the kind of person you want to.
Yeah, so I asked her, I was swimming, I go, hey, how does that back brace work? Like, I don't understand how it works. Not figuring it would go anywhere. She goes, well, I could get in and show you. I was like, yes. So she got in, we strapped her all up and in the water, so she's wet. And then we carried her to dinner, and then we propped her up on the fireplace in the dining room for everyone to see. And she just sat there and everyone laughed. And nowadays, I think people would frown on that, but I was 19.
That might be illegal now. It might be illegal.
19. I was a program director, and we had every camp has that one staff member that walks around with a guitar and like a squirrel sitting on the end of the guitar, and is like playing things, and like
I know just the guy. We must know the same guy.
Everybody has him, and this guy's name was Michael or Yahweh or whatever, and he was gold. Like, he did nothing wrong. He was the most amazing staff member. The kids followed him to anywhere he went, and he was gold. And so he shared a room with this kid that was from my corps, who was kind of he was a punk, and a fun punk. And so I'm walking down the hill, and I see a pair of chonies, some underwear that had contents inside them, and they're in the middle, and I'm trying to figure out the story of how those even got there. Where is the culprit and all that stuff? But I actually come up with a better idea. Instead of investigating, I pick it up with a stick and I go to lay it on the kid's bed from my corps on his sleeping bag. And no one's around, so no one sees it. And so I'm in the office, and I see Michael with his guitar on his back running down the hill, and it's clear that there's a major incident happening. Just the fierceness of his run, and he comes up and he's out of breath, and he goes, Jim, the worst thing has happened to me. And I was like, tell me what happened. What happened? And he goes, someone put dirty underwear on my bed. I was like, what? I go, who would, what? And he's like, I am so disgusted. I don't know if I could even work at this place. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, that hot feeling, I'm sweating and all that stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm looking around. I'm like, nobody knows. Just hang in there. And I go, tell me which bed you're on. And he goes, I'm on the bottom bunk next to the wall. I go, I thought you were on the top bunk. And he goes, no, the other guy and I switched. And so the guy switched. So I thought I was putting on his, but I actually put it on Michael's. And I was like, Michael, I'm sorry that happened to you. Let
me pray for you.
I'm really sorry that happened to you. And you know what, Michael, I'm just going to go up there. I'm going to take care of that. I'll clean it up and make sure that it's not around. And then I'll let you know kind of what happens later. I was like, how do I get out of this without lying? but without having to save face and admit it, because everything's going to break down. It was a disaster. And so coincidentally, in that same week, we're in chapel and a kid is like holding himself, and kids always try to ditch chapel because it's boring. Right. And, and he goes, I got to go to the bathroom. I'm like, no, stay here. Because kids don't ever have to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, stay here. So all of a sudden praise and worship starts and I don't see the kid. And I'm mad because now, you're checking my authority. Right. So I'm like, where is he? And they're like, he's on the ground. He's on the ground holding himself. And I was like, oh my gosh, get up. Let's go. And he had to run down 35 stairs and then across the basketball court to get to the bathroom. And so I'm like, come on, run. We're running down the stairs and he's with me. And all of a sudden I don't hear his footsteps anymore. And so I turned around and he didn't make it. And and it was catastrophic. And
camp food will do that.
Yeah. And I was like, it's okay, buddy. It's not a big deal. We're going to be fine. And so I worked it out and got the nurse and took care of it. And she's like, what happened? I was like, he just had an accident. And so there was stuff still on the court. And so I called maintenance that a coyote must have been sick and stuff. And so that was taken care of. So
that's great. That's great stuff.
So those are some. I don't know. I had a whole book of stories. My life is built around content of mishaps in youth ministry. We did. Just a couple years ago. This was not me. Finally, they were doing the Minute to Win It games, and those games are terrible. Like in youth ministry, I don't understand why youth workers gravitate to these games that are constant failures for our kids. They're like, all right, we're going to do games and we got a bunch of prizes that we're never going to be able to get out because none of you guys are going to be able to win any of these Minute to Win It games, but it's going to be exciting. So let's do that now. And so we did that. And, but they choked on a Twix, like a little Twix thing, and was choking in front of the entire camp.
And everybody's like, ah!
I know. I'm on the microphone going, hey, are you okay? And she's like, no. And an officer jumped up and did the Heimlich maneuver, popped that bad boy right on out. And everyone's like, yay! And stuff like that. We almost had someone die over a friggin' Minute to Win a game. So, but yeah, one last camp story. I deconstructed songs because I'm trying to tell everyone that we have to be careful with our messaging. Like we have to really think about like the messaging. It bothered me that kids would be leaving singing, these wild songs, which are fun. They're fun to sing, but those are the ones that they would have memorized. And I wanted them to know Sunday school songs that they could memorize, that they're locked in their head. They're speaking the scriptures. And so I was explaining this to camps, and I didn't realize that this particular camp, this was their favorite song. But I was like, if you take Chiquita Banana, the song Chiquita Banana, that message is just giving kids the definition of bulimia. And the look on their face was just horror. And I'm like, no, think about it. You eat the banana. You swallow the banana. Then what do? You barf the banana immediately. So I go, that's the definition of bulimia, right? Like that's the message that we're receiving. We shouldn't be doing that. And so I was just using an example. The hate that I received from all of that was so much, but I'll stand by it. I stand by it.
Well, speaking of stories, I know. So we wanted to talk to you today too about the Saynetwork podcast that the Western Territory has, which you guys run there. And I heard the other day on your podcast, well, it was a couple of months ago now, but about kettles, and that you have had. Speaking of stereotypes, like we imagine that's what the Western Territory is like. Celebrities are just walking, like you bump into Michael B. Jordan at Walmart. Like I'm sure that's happened to you multiple times.
It was Walgreens, but yeah,
we've had that you have had celebrities put money in your kettle while you've been out ringing bells. Do you care right now to name drop them on national podcasts?
I could name drop. Yeah. I should tell you that I don't really care about celebrities much, but it has been kind of cool. Like, but my first,
if I'm remembering right from both of your stories, somebody had to tell you that was a celebrity that just
Well, yes. The first one very much. Tupac Shakur gave money to a kettle when I was just getting started with kettles. I didn't know who he was. He was with an entourage, and he whipped out a wad of cash and then flipped through it and then pulled
Define wide,
like a giant
like
stack of
like
hundreds.
hip hop wide.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he had, I'm sure, cross-colored jeans that had pockets big enough to house those. And he gave it 20. That's all he gave, all that cash, and he gave it 20. And I didn't know who that was, but it was, Tupac, before he died, obviously. He doesn't give much since he died, but and then actually last year, Angela Bassett gave money to that, which was really cool. I did see her, like I was playing, to be fair, and I'm carrying a tuba, so I have to concentrate a little bit more. But I knew she was someone, I just could not figure it out. But the girl next to me, who's the officer's daughter, she was having like hyperventilating attack. Like that was a big deal for her. And she's like, "Can I go say hi to her?" I'm like, "Yeah, go say hi to her." Like, go for it. That's cool. But we actually working at the camp, and our camp in Southern California is famous in its own right for filming locations. And the opening scene of MASH, it flies right up and over our camp. Our cross is very visible in that opening scene of MASH. But they filmed a lot, and they filmed while I lived there. And it's really cool at first. And then once they start filming, you're like, all right, this is ridiculous. But Ronald McDonald was there, the Ronald McDonald. In fact, the producer said we have to refer to him as Mr. McDonald. And he goes, but he was a really nice guy. His stand-in was actually like Krusty the Clown. He was smoking and didn't like anything in life. But yeah, living around in there, because it's next to Malibu, you do see celebrities. Like saw Mel Gibson 3 times in one day in different spots. So at some point, you feel like he's stalking me, because like the first one is weird, like the second one, but then the third one, like that. All right, now you're really just looking for me, Mr. Gibson. But yeah, it's just weird. The people that seem to matter, like to younger people, ironically, and I should know this, I don't know. And so like we're in a store and like, oh my gosh, that's, I don't know who, some young singer. And I was like,
go with it. Just go with it. First person in your head. Go with it.
Particularly if they're music artists, I don't know. I don't know them. I don't know music. I just listened to the Gaithers still. So
that Gaither's Homecoming.
No, here's a fact. It's an actual fact. I listen to folk music. That's my jam, and so nobody knows, nobody cares. And
I don't know if you could say jam to folk music, but well, we'll take it.
Oh, I can jam. I can jam.
That's my bop. That's my bop.
But no, kettles. The funny part is I've seen bigger celebrities just standing at a kettle than celebrity kettle kickoffs that I've been a part of, because the celebrity kettle kickoffs are they're usually local celebrities or like let's make a deal celebrities, and but yeah, some big boys have kind of come by the kettles before. It's kind of fun.
Nice. Jim, tell us a little bit about your podcast. How did it get started? Kind of what's your goal and all of that, and how do we find you?
So you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, iTunes, or whatever, and it's called the Saynetwork podcast. We are in our 4th season now. We're going to be recording our 5th season coming up here. I don't know. I think I mentioned to you guys before this, but I've attempted a couple different podcasts. I like the venue of podcasts to be able to learn from others. And that's really all we're trying to do with that podcast is learn from others. And not just normal like interviews. Like sometimes we'll do a normal interview, but we really like to figure out like what someone is good at and how can we learn from that. And actually, the National Commander, Commissioner Hodder, his podcasts, his recordings that we did with him were always like very well received, not because he's a commissioner, but it's very practical. He taught us some very, very good things. And he's also easy to interview because he's incredibly prepared. And so it moves along really well. But yeah, and then we try to find different stories. Like my favorite one in this last season was interviewing a youth worker who got hired just after the pandemic started. And then gets hired, and then her officers move. So she's in her first job ever as a youth worker. In the middle of a pandemic, gets hired with no kids around. And then her officers move immediately, and then gets a temporary set of officers, I think, and then an actual set of officers. So she's going through like 3 sets of officers by September. And just listening to how she's navigating all of that, it's super cool. And I think one of the, maybe a mistake might be a heavy word, but I think one of the mistakes that people make of youth departments, both DHQ and THQ, is that we're the total experts. We've given our lives to be experts at things, like, because we care deeply, and I care all about all this stuff. But the reality is the youth workers themselves, and that are doing it day in and day out. And not to say that we're not doing youth work, like I teach Corps cadets and stuff like that, but I'm not in the day in and day out work. Is they know way more, and they're catching on and stuff. And so it's trying to provide an avenue to learn from them as well, and so that we could stay up to speed. And we've been trying to have more fun. For some reason, I don't have as much fun. So we talk about youth culture stuff, which brings up some fun stuff. But yeah, so we're in our 4th season, and we are going to be talking a little bit about camp in this next season, and then interviewing some different people from around our territory as well, just to kind of learn from them. It's really cool. And there's been several times where I've taken stuff away myself, just being like, man, that's really cool. Just that youth worker that I was telling you, just to listen to the excitement and the hope and the zeal that she has to do what she's doing, because God has called her to do that, and to do that was like super inspiring for me, because I feel like in this last year, all I've been doing is fighting. You're fighting all kinds of things, trying to get policies through, trying to do this, trying to figure out what all that stuff is. And I feel like this whole last year is negative. And then you interview this youth worker, and she's like, oh, it doesn't matter that there's a pandemic. What I've done is just done this and it does this. And then I'm meeting with them, and I'm phoning them all week. And it's like, that's what it should be. And that's what it should be. And so that's refreshing. It's really cool to hear that. And, we have a very faithful group of 9 listeners that that are really good with us. They support us. And, my mom is really cool.
Same. I was going to say, man, you're up in the 9s. We've got, I think, 3 moms, listen to ours.
I am grateful my mom doesn't listen, because she would critique the snot out of me. She's like, that doesn't make any sense. My mom was a neighborhood disciplinarian, and it didn't matter who you were. It was like, Mrs. Sparks is going to get you.
So tell us a little bit. We talked again, like there's an assumption, Jim, that like people in the Western Territory, like we made a joke about like bumping into celebrities at Walgreens, but like people assume there's like a California vibe, right? Like the whole Western Territory, it's island, it's beach, it's Saved by the Bell. Saved by the Bell in the 90s. That's what Youth Ministries like all the time. Yeah. But what is it? Tell us, what's the vibe of the working in the Western part of the United States? Surely, like, there's probably some stuff you have to deal with, maybe, that in an attitude or a mindset or cultural thing that probably people on the other side of the United States don't really understand. And anything like that?
It's so different in our territory, geographically speaking. I already explained how wide it is, and so you run into such different cultures everywhere. To a Tlingit tribe up in Alaska, to out in the Marshallese, out in the Marshall Islands, and to Southern California, to like urban cities or Seattle or San Francisco, and then to kind of out country like Wyoming, and so it's so different. And so what challenges is what language do we speak? The language that we speak is really different, and where we go. And I've learned the hard way. I've said some very wrong things that I could have said in Southern California, no problem. But in another division, it's like, boy, you should never say that again. And after a 2-hour conversation with an officer, then you get the message that what you said was maybe not appropriate for that area. But it's what's so cool about it is that it is so different. And so there isn't a one size fits all mentality, and it isn't all California, and it isn't all beaches. And it's nothing like what people see on the TV. I always laugh because I grew up in Orange County, and the show Orange County was very similar to my life. None of it was similar. My friends weren't that good looking, and I don't think I was that good looking, and I didn't sit in a hot tub with people and just laugh about life. That didn't happen, and um, so it is different, and it's hard. Like there's communities that have different challenges and are suffering in different ways, and trying to understand those and trying to be able to communicate in a way that they understand is a bit of a challenge, because it is so different. And but it's so cool when we get together because the vibe, as you say, is completely different. I think because we could have hula dancers doing a thing and then turn around and pull off a mariachi thing like real quick. That doesn't take much, and so the spread of program options is so vast. It's really really cool, and I guess it's something that I got. I think I was desensitized for a long time because it was natural for me. But as I started traveling more and traveling to different territories and even countries to do things, I realized that ours is a little bit different in that way, and it doesn't feel forced. Where some places it feels forced, it doesn't feel forced. It feels very natural that that's just kind of who we are, and that's the makeup of it. And some of our divisions are less diverse than others naturally, but program wise, it's very very different, and it's cool. Like I really like it, and it gives me a different understanding. Interestingly, though, the kids disciplinary wise are different in different spots. So let's take camps for instance. In some of our camps, when our kids get angry, they just run. They go for a run. They run and try to run away from camp. And I worked 9 summers at a camp where we had not one runner. And sorry, we had one, and I called. He didn't run very far because I just said, "Hey, just let him run because that's dark woods over there, and he will stop." And sure enough, he stopped.
He hit that coyote spot on the basketball court.
Exactly. He slipped, but they would run, and I was like, "That's weird. Like, do your kids run all like? Oh yeah, some kids run here. We never had that." And then we had a visitor one time at another camp, and there was a fist fight, which happened all the time at our camps. And they're like, "Are you going to send them home?" I'm like, "No, it's just a fist fight." And they're like, "What?" I go, "This happens all the time." And they didn't have that. Like, so kids respond differently in different places. And so it's a bit of a challenge. And so actually, um, I do a lot of research when I go to, like, if I'm speaking somewhere and teaching, I actually do a lot of research to make sure that I am in the right culture and what I'm saying is going to be brought, like, understood, and that because I don't want to be throwing them in tangents in other places. And so you have to do a lot of research, and you have to understand that you're not always welcome right away in places, and so it does take time. And one of our places is very difficult to get welcomed, and naturally, but when you get welcomed, when you get cross that path or do something, in my case it was getting leveled by a football tackle. I caught a ball and the kid leveled me, and I jumped up, and it wasn't because I wasn't hurt. I jumped up because I didn't know what happened, and it was a natural reaction, and they thought I took the hit, and all of a sudden now I'm part of the community. Then it's the most like lovable community and faithful community, and it's just really cool. So
Very cool.
but it just takes time. It takes time as you travel.
Jim, what's your go-to story that keeps you in youth ministry? You know, that time you saw a kid. It didn't have to be at camp, but and it was maybe it even wasn't a kid, but you saw that person have their heart changed by Jesus. And like whenever times get tough, whenever you think, man, why in the world am I doing this? Why am I? We talked about earlier, fighting the man. You know, like what just keeps you going?
Yeah, there's a lot of those stories. There's just a ton, and they all have the same common denominator. It's the second chance kid that really made a lot of people angry, that found their way. And when I say found their way, hopefully they found Jesus, obviously, and that happens, but not always. But they found a person that cares about them and loves them, and you could see a change in that. It could be as simple as a high five that is given to someone, and that's a big breakthrough. Or it could be like what ultimately we want is that them to be led to Christ. And there's a lot of those. And the first major one that I noticed affected me when I was about 18. And it was a camp one, and a kid that came, no one liked him. He came off the bus and he was angry at life. He took the dowels out of the closets and were hitting kids, that kind of stuff, coat hanger, smacking them. I don't know, just kids being kids. And but he had they were going to send him home, and they, as most program directors do, defy the pleas of the rest of the people of saying, please send this kid home. They're like, no, let's give him a chance. And you're like, don't give him a chance. You don't have to live with him. And that ping pong game you play. But he said, if I could have that guy that gave me the tour on the first day stay with me, then I'll be good. Well, I was the guy that gave him the tour on the first day, and I took advantage of the tours. Like I gave the highlight, the biggest tours you've ever seen. But but he saved me because I was stuck working as a cook. I thought that was a good idea. It's not. I can tell you right now, working as a cook in a camp is the worst job in the history of jobs. I could go on, but I am now dying 7 years earlier than for having worked in the kitchen. And so they pulled me out of the kitchen and said, hey, you're not going to be a cook for the last 3 days of camp. I'm like, oh, sweet. But you have to hang out with this kid. I was like, oh, geez. I'd rather burn my fingers on cookies that people don't like. And so I hung out with him, and I just treated him like a normal kid, and he treated me like a normal adult, and we had a good time, and I saw a change in his life. And so just seeing those stories, and then to add a layer onto that is, I think my favorite thing to see is youth leaders that were those kids.
That's great.
And so when I travel and I look, or even like getting a Service Corps application, I have to be careful because I have a lot of information on people. Like I'm able to retain a lot of information on people specifically. Most often I could tell the first time I met you, I could tell you probably what you were wearing, and I retain that information. And so that's a problem because when they turn in their applications, I'm like, oh, geez. Do you know what happened in 2016 with this clown? And so, but to see radical transformation and see people giving back and doing that work is what really is a big drive for me. That makes me excited. That means the system is working. As much as I can look at the failures and be affected emotionally by all that, to see those successes is a big deal. And it's not just them being an officer. That's cool, but just being in youth work or being a leader wherever they are, or just being a good human, it brings a great deal of joy to me, and gives me the drive to keep being now the old guy that's worked forever in youth ministry.
Jim, I'm going to drop in a question on you that I didn't give you ahead of time.
All right.
So, and also I do want to say, like, I was the kid who in high school I would go into Sunday school and sit down and say, my goal is to make this lady cry by the end of class.
Nice.
That was a real peach.
and that kid too could become an officer and do youth ministry one day.
Yeah. So the fun part about that is on the flip side. Then when we became officers and we had some kids in Sunday school class who
would make me cry,
would try to make the teacher cry, I'd just be like, Matt, what? This is God paying you back for who you were, and I don't know why I have to be a part of that, but okay.
So here's my drop-in question for you, Jim. Like what concerns you for the youth? What concerns you for the youth today, as they just grow up in this world?
That's a really big question, and my answer would change if you asked me next week, probably.
Sure.
But right now, I'm most concerned with good, like loving, caring, empathetic examples of adults for them right now.
Excellent answer.
I just it's so easy to turn away from all of this, any of this, when you see the people who are supposed to be your example, those elders not being cool, just being jerks, and to a level of jerkiness that they don't even understand how much of a jerk that they actually are, and that's a concern, and it's been exasperated. Did I say that correctly? I was trying a new big word today, and like
Word of
over
the day calendar's paying off.
yeah, it was given to me 15 years ago, but the this year we've been in collective trauma this year. It's not just anybody; everybody's in trauma with COVID, and we're all tired and having to deal with things emotionally that we've never had to deal with. Some of us, our backs are just against the wall constantly, and so there's this fight that has been within, and then not to mention the obvious divide politically and all that garbage. And so it's just this recipe, this stew that we have right now that is breeding really horrible examples of how to treat each other, and our youth see that, and our youth see everything. They know everything about us somehow. They are like as equipped as senior citizens are with news in the church.
The weather.
There is a collection of senior citizens that know the moves before the moves come out. It's really remarkable. But kids are the same way, and they know all that stuff, and they're emulating that stuff. And my fear is that we're breeding a generation, bringing up a generation that think that this is normal, and this isn't normal, and loving others is what we should be doing. And I could love you even though you don't agree with me, and we live different lives, and there's still room for all of that. And I want kids to understand that that's okay. But it's really hard when you're competing against dumb people on Facebook and spreading weird things that don't make any sort of sense. Like, even when you call them on it, you're like, hey man, do you actually believe this? Oh, well, I didn't read the article or anything. You're like, oh, that's not important and stuff. I was laughing. There's someone sent a meme around. It was golden. It was like, the very people that try to pass legislation for us to not play video games because it was going to ruin our brains and cause us to do all this stuff are the ones that are spreading all of these things that are ruining other people's brains or something to that effect. It's like, come on. It's heartbreaking in a way. But we could be better. And but I believe our youth are resilient and they're stronger. And I think that they could see through a lot of this and be the examples that we should be.
Yeah.
Great answers, Jim. Great answers.
We talked about the same thing a little bit on our podcast last week about just the division and the hate that's going on social media, and how it's just so disheartening. How do we as the church say we follow God, we follow Jesus, who's all about love. Let us teach you, but we're not really going to act that way. We're going to slaughter each other on social media.
Yeah.
But hey, let's love each other.
I think some of us just are craving a platform of interaction, and this is a way to do it without thinking much through it. And so it's like, I just need a like right now. I just need that. I need someone to like something that I'm posting.
That'll preach.
I need an audience. And so and then what's misunderstood is then the algorithms start getting to you and start feeding you that, and then you get into this weird rabbit hole that you are now. But what's happening in that rabbit hole as you're talking a certain way, and it doesn't matter which way, as you're talking a certain way, now your circles start shrinking and shrinking, but they get louder and louder, and it makes you feel good. And it's just a loneliness problem. And I think if we were better friends, it sounds so trivial. I think if we were better friends, then we'd have less problems with some of this stuff. I think if we were just called our friends and said, hey man, I love you. And I miss hanging out with you, but let's just chat while we go for a walk. I think if we did that more, things would be different. Cause I have found a couple people that have said some pretty boneheaded things. And I just say, hey, that's kind of boneheaded, right? And we talk about it, and then I come to an understanding of where they're coming from, and they come to an understanding where I come from, and I think we can move to a better place. But it's just this. I think the underlying thing is this desire to have community and people have found this in these political things, and even if there's hypocrisy all over it, it doesn't matter because you don't see it because you're knee deep into this algorithm. It's scary. It's scary how that could work. But as a youth worker, this is a wake up call for us to be educating everybody as much as we can to say, hey, this is how easily life can be manipulated for you, and you could turn into your bad self very quickly if you're not being careful with how you operate. Now, for uncle whoever it is that is just crazy, we need those people in our life because we need to have content to be able to share and laugh as a family.
Jim, these are great. These are great answers. Appreciate you being on with us. Knee deep in the algorithm, ladies and gentlemen, is Jim Sparks' favorite folk song.
That's
Knee
right.
Deep in the algorithm.
That's actually a band. They're playing at Coachella.
That Fire Festival.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the things, Jim, we ask every week to, kind of boost ourselves, make sure that we're focusing on the good in life is what is giving you joy. So what's going on in your life right now that's giving you joy?
I don't know. I struggle with joy. I gotta be perfectly honest, because again, my brain deconstructs things, so that tends to take away some joy out of simple stuff. So strangely, this pandemic, as awful as it is, and as long as it shouldn't have gone, and all that stuff, as a parent, anything that you've ever wanted to do is press pause on life and slow everything down. And I have 3 boys. They are and they're heavily into sports. We attend a lot of sports, and I love every bit of it. I love. I will attend games of. I've attended games of kids at my core regularly. I don't need my own kids to be there. I love going to games and watching. I go on Tuesday mornings and watch a group of senior citizen guys play softball in the park because I just love it. But what this time has done is we've been home this entire time with each other, is pause in a pivotal time, I think, in their lives to really enjoy each other and really understand and not lose sight of how fast everything's going. And there's just more time allotted because my commute to work is really long. It's an hour and a half. And so I've been given the gift of time to be able to hang out with my family and my wife and all that stuff. I haven't traveled on an airplane in over a year. The last trip was to national headquarters a year ago. And so it's really, really cool. I am so excited that like I've been able to have this time. As awful it is, the silver lining is that we've been able to enjoy that. I feel like though we're in a race to do all these home improvement projects before sports and church take back the weekends. Like I've been looking forward to Mondays to relax and go to work. And, but it's been just really joy, like just a simple act of playing catch out in the backyard is it's just a lot of joy for me. And yeah, it's been really, really exciting through it. And I think my extended family has gotten closer because that's what your bubble is in a way, to an extent. And so that's all been good. And my hope out of all of this is that we're developing better family habits for not just my own family, but for each other and our friends. Because what I loved like through this time is like our front doorbell rings. Well, that's a lie. I just lied to you. Our doorbell doesn't ring. I've been meaning to fix that for a long time. But a knock on the door, and then I open up, and there's like brownies just sitting there from like one of our neighbors. Like we've gotten to know our neighbors, and people are doing all this extra good stuff because it's a time of trials. My prayer is that this is all habit. We've all formed habit, so that way when we're back to our busy lives, that I could still knock on someone's door and give them a set of brownies, and we could share that with each other. And so that's my hope. And we've talked about it as a family that we're not going to stop doing that type of stuff because it's been fun for us. I built a mascot. I build my kids' Halloween costumes, and so one time I built a bobblehead a really big bobblehead for my kids, and it shakes. It's got springs in it, all that stuff. I'll send you guys pictures later. But I had him put them on, and we went to all of our friends and played Take Me Out to the Ball Game out in the front, and the kids, everyone went bonkers. So just those simple things to do with your neighbors. I hope that builds habits. Long answer, but that's what's bringing joy.
I'm gonna have to Jesus up my answer now.
No, I love it. We've played a lot more games too at our house with our two girls. The downside of that is that they have become really good at trash talking and also beating me, which is not so much fun for me.
Jim, I did want to ask. So I'm going to throw out a number. You tell me higher or lower. You go to all these like sporting events for kids. So I'll throw out this number. You tell me, have you seen a parent like verbally attack a ref more than this many number of times? Okay, I'm going to go 6.
Oh yes.
Way higher. You've heard of Karen go after a ref.
Yeah, I'm on our board of directors for our Little League, and I am what's called a player agent. And so I represent all the kids. I'm looking out for their safety and their kindness and all that stuff. And so I've gotten involved. Luckily, our league's pretty cool, but we've run into some boneheads. Here's the common denominator for boneheaded parents that can't help themselves is they were unsuccessful themselves. And so they believe that their kid is superior, but they don't really believe that. They want themselves to feel good and be part of the top class. And it's a really sad situation. And so I have quietly been writing like what I thought would be a fun sports sitcom. But the premise really is that the parents have all the issues in the sitcom and the kids are always full of joy and they're always just having fun because that's really what's happening out of all of this. But yeah, some boneheaded stuff. But no, I attend sports things. I am a season ticket holder of the Caltech basketball team. And there's about 20 of us that attend the games. And
is that like season tickets or total?
A total
Okay,
people
just making sure. Just making sure. Clarify.
Division III. Caltech is a science, math school, engineering school, and
known for their basketball. It's a basketball school, really.
They have the smartest people in the world, arguably, working there, and they had 330 game losing streak. And I live close by, and so I go and I watched 45 straight losses before they won. But let me tell you, that one victory was a really big deal. And,
who did they beat? Do you remember?
Yes, they beat Occidental, which was the rival, and so that was kind of a big deal. And
rival win. That's awesome.
Yep, and but it's super cool. I go. My wife doesn't understand it because she was like a team all state for basketball, and so she likes good basketball, and she cannot stand the fact that I go to these games. But I go by myself. But here's what's cool: is I met 2 other guys that we watch the games together, and one is a professor from Caltech, and he reads the most crazy books during every timeout you've ever seen. It's so eclectic. I can't even get into it. And then the other is a close friend of mine. His name is Clarence, and he's a postal worker, and he just retired, and he's always in his postal uniform. And we sit together, and we watch these games, and we believe every game that they're going to win. And they have won a few times, but what it's done is it's allowed me to develop relationships that are unique and fun. And we talk about life and talk about things, and we are in different spaces in life, but we share this common team that loses frequently and love for it. And it's super cool. So all that to say is to get out of your circle. Salvation Army people, please get out of your circle. You get stuck in these circles, you get stuck in these groups, and they just get smaller and you become insular. Get out of your circle because there is a lot of joy. There's a lot of great things that are happening outside of the Salvation Army that you could go to. And I find joy in watching a team that has had a school record win last year of 7 wins. Okay. So get out of your bubbles, people.
What's given me joy a little bit is what Jim was talking about earlier. Is just I have really enjoyed because of the pandemic being on Facebook and just seeing all the Salvation Army youth events taking place virtually across the country. It's kind of nice to be able to see. So I can watch a youth councils in Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and then next day see a young adult retreat in the Northwest Division in the Western Territory. So it's very cool to see that. That's what's given me joy, just to see, again, as Jim was talking about, the differences, just to see it across the country is awesome. That's about me. How about you, Elizabeth?
I'm going to keep it classic here and go with S Club 7.
Yes.
Jim admitted that he didn't follow music, and I wouldn't say that it was like 2021 music. Like S Club 7, they hit their peak probably when, Elizabeth?
I wasn't listening to them when they were on their peak. Was it like early 2000s?
Yeah, that's
like
what I would say, early
2002.
Oh my God.
Okay, yeah. No, I was too young then.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
All right, Jamie, wrap us up.
Yeah, so I'm going to go the opposite way of Jim, which I would completely 100% agree. We have loved all the extra family time. But what's bringing me joy is my daughter got to go back into school in person for the first time yesterday in a year. They're only going part-time, not even every day a week, just 2 days a week. But this is she's very introverted, and I have been very concerned that the pandemic has not helped her, develop how to succeed and live in the real world, even though you are an introvert. And so it was good for me to see she came out with a smile. So that was good for mom's heart. This is a new school. We moved in the middle of the pandemic. So new school, new environment. So she had a good day. She did have a mega complaint about the nachos. They didn't melt the cheese. They just handed her shredded cheese.
There was a nacho emergency at school, which was just...
Well, that's very fair. And she needs to understand that the student council needs to step their game up and put the pressure.
I'm going to tell her, start a petition, Lillian.
If you're one of these Americans who is putting shredded cheese on nachos,
not even melting it, it's just a cup of shredded cheese and a bag of chips. She was very discouraged.
What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you who hurt you that you put shredded cheese on chips and call it nachos? No.
Wait, so they didn't melt any of it? It was just a cup of regular cheese?
No. She got up. She said, I got up to the window and they said, we have nachos. Do you want chili or cheese? So she was like, of course. I said cheese. And she said, they handed me a bag of chips and a little cup with shredded cheese in it. And then she just looked at them like,
thanks, Corona.
Oh my goodness.
But I have since heard that those are not Corona nachos. That's just how her school makes nachos. So she's not super impressed by that. But the other parts of the school she really likes.
Okay, so here's what you need to do. You guys need to go buy a cheap microwave. Put it on like one of those little old lady book dollies, and then bungee cord it around and have her drag it to the thing, and say, I will microwave your nachos so that cheese melts for $1, and it'll go to World Services, and she would be locked and loaded.
For sure.
Yeah. So it is good joys all around.
Jim, thank you so much for talking with us today, man. We appreciate it. Yeah, it was Saynetwork podcast. Check it out. Look for them on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Saynetwork. That's the thing about the Salvation Army. You can put a Y or any other letter after SA, and it just makes it all fits. The word that just keeps on giving. That's going to end this episode of the Battle Line podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the Battle Line wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to check out the Peer website, peermag.org, or follow Peer on the socials at peer.magazine. Lastly, even though they made fun of Elizabeth and her super fantabulous day, check out our sister podcast called the Fight for Good podcast. Until next time, this has been the Battle Line. Bye.
Bye.